Well, he cashed out billions of dollars in Amazon stock to build Blue Origin, but he's been vilified for the way he treats employees, for their salaries, also for allegedly not paying taxes. So for some, this really struck a raw nerve, Lester.
All right, Tom Costello in Texas. In just 60 seconds, Stephanie Ruhle talks with Jeff Bezos about today's thriller in space and keeping American athletes safe in Tokyo with the Olympics just 3 days away. It lasted just 10 minutes, but it changed their lives. What did Jeff Bezos and the others learn from today's space flight? Stephanie Ruhle spoke to Bezos and his brother Mark just moments after their flight.
Jeff Bezos, you are an astronaut now. How does it feel?
It's amazing. You know, there are no words. It was a perfect mission. I'm not talented enough to put this into words. The accelerating G forces and how that felt your skin pulled back and pushed into the seat. And then zero G comes so suddenly, and then you're just floating. It's surprisingly natural. It's an effortless zero G. You feel comfortable.
I want to know, what did it feel like to be up there together when you locked eyes?
It was pretty special. First of all, it just meant a tremendous amount to me to be able to represent my mom and dad, our sister Christina. We did a little hi mom in zero G. One of us was upside down in zero G. Hopefully we got it right.
What did you experience that matters to all Americans?
Well, listen, we have to build a road to space so that our kids and their kids can build the future and keep Earth as this beautiful gem of a planet that it is. Now that's going to take decades and decades to achieve, but you have to start, and big things start with small steps.
Stephanie Ruhle with Jeff Bezos. Less than 3 days to go until the opening ceremony at the Tokyo Olympics, but competition is already getting underway. And with COVID, the invisible opponent, Tom Yamas, in Tokyo tonight, and how the athletes are trying to stay safe.
Tonight, the world's greatest athletes, including Japan's Naomi Osaka, have two goals: win a medal and dodge the virus. Tokyo reporting a spike in COVID cases today, more than 1,300 new infections. Still, skateboarder Nyjah Huston says so far, he's enjoying his sport's first Olympics.
It's better than what I expected. Obviously, we still gotta be safe and take precautions because of COVID, but it's amazing to be here and see this all happen.
Around the city, venues are preparing for an Olympics like no other, making sure athletes are safe.
Here in the men's locker room for swimming, you'll see COVID rules from the moment they walk in. You can see right here, they're in Japanese, but also they have some pictures. And then over here, every other sink is closed off to keep the social distancing. And on the mirrors, more rules. You feel like you're ready and that the swimmers are going to be safe?
Yes, of course. No doubt.
The most dramatic COVID measure? No spectators, even though Tokyo is still full of crowds, from packed trains to semi-full baseball stadiums. I asked Tokyo's governor why the Olympic Games were being singled out.
Why can people go to the baseball game, but they can't go to the Olympics?
The Olympics is not a local game. It's an international game. Therefore, the medical sector has asked us not to have spectators due to there being more passionate cheering.
Olympic organizers say it will be a different type of event, but promise it will still captivate
There are
the
a number
world.
of integration
Lester,
methodologies
even
that
with
are
competition
applicable
getting
to
underway
various
tonight, a
classes
top
of
Olympic
problems.
official says there's still a chance all of this could be canceled if cases spike. But the focus right now is on delivering a successful Games. Lester?
All right, Tom Yamas, thank you. The largest of the western wildfires in south-central Oregon is spreading rapidly tonight, fueled by hot, dry weather. Officials are asking for firefighting help from outside the state. Smoke from that fire has reached clear across the country. Air quality advisories indicating unhealthy conditions are up in several states and include New York City, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh. Tonight, marking 6 months in office, President Biden insisting he's delivering on his promise on COVID and the economy. But from rising prices to rising crime, Republicans
First
are
order
painting a very
differential
different picture.
questions.
Kelly Bell is at the
There
White
are a
House.
number of integration methods that are applicable to various classes of problems. There are a number of integration methods that are applicable to various classes of problems.
Delivering on our promises.
His stewardship over the COVID crisis, the highest priority.
We have to stay vigilant, especially with the Delta variant that's out there.
The president did deliver on his early pledge to speed vaccinations, but now struggles to convince hesitant Americans to get the shots. On the economy, he says now more Americans are working.
3 million jobs. more than any administration has done in the first 6 months of being in office.
But today, House Republicans delivered their own 6-month report card, including blasting inflation at a 13-year high.
Americans are paying more for everything thanks to President Joe Biden.
On the global stage, the president says he has restored traditional partnerships.
America is back at the table.
But it's unclear whether demands made of adversaries like Russia will be met. And on immigration, Republicans blame the president for migrant apprehensions at a 21-year high.
At the border, the crisis continues to spiral out of control. We've seen historic numbers continue to rise.
The president unsatisfied.
We have to tackle the immigration problem, which we're working really hard to get done.
And then there's rising crime. The president also acknowledged that voting rights and infrastructure are key goals still not within reach. Lester?
Kelly O'Donnell at the White House, thank you. The man who chaired Donald Trump's 2017 inaugural committee was arrested today in charge of violating federal lobbying laws. The indictment said Thomas Barrack unlawfully tried to influence foreign policy decisions of the Trump campaign and later the administration to advance the interests of the United Arab Emirates. A spokesman says Barrack will plead not guilty. Former Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein, convicted of rape in New York City, will now face charges he sexually assaulted 5 women in Los Angeles. Weinstein arrived at the airport in Burbank, California today after losing his fight against extradition. Earlier today, a Buffalo, New York prison turned him over to California authorities. When we come back, more suspected cases of a mysterious illness hitting Americans. It's a mysterious illness thought to be the result of attacks on U.S. officials posted overseas. And tonight, Andrea Mitchell has more on a growing number of potential cases.
Tonight, U.S. officials telling NBC News as many as 200 Americans have now reported possible cases of that so-called Havana syndrome. Mysterious neurological symptoms, sometimes brain damage, first reported by diplomats at the U.S. Embassy in Havana in 2016, then appearing in Russia and China. This year, 24 new cases in Vienna, another in Berlin. U.S. officials say potential victims on every continent but Antarctica.
We are investigating and reviewing reports of incidents from all around the world,
including personnel from the State Department, CIA, and Pentagon, but no proof of the cause. In 2018, NBC News reported U.S. intelligence officials suspected Russia. Russia denies it. But Mark Ponomaropoulos told me he had to quit the CIA because of symptoms that started in Moscow.
I couldn't stand up. I was falling over. I had an incredible sense of nausea and ringing in my ears. I was frankly terrified.
He sat down exclusively with Cuban investigators in 2017 who denied blame.
Cuba doesn't possess this technology. Cuba has never produced these types of weapons.
While searching for the cause, the Biden administration is working on devices to protect personnel, as it's considering sending diplomats back to Havana for the first time since the attack started. Lester?
Okay, Andrea, thank you. We told you last night about a shortage of cars. Well, furniture is hard to come by these days, too. Kristen Dahlgren explains in The Price You Pay for a shortage of material.
Today, Brina Furman is shopping for an ottoman, but she may not be able to put her feet up until...
We're looking at January of 22.
Furniture shipping is running months behind.
I ordered the chair in December of 2020, and it came about 2 weeks ago.
The issue? Foam, that spongy material in cushions, is in short supply after last winter's storm in the South shut down production at 5 major U.S. plants that make its main chemical component. They're still not back to normal, in a supply chain already stretched by global shipping and staffing issues.
So the foam shortage has really just delayed absolutely everything.
Nick Johnson owns Sukasa Furniture in the Baltimore area.
We would normally have quoted somebody a standard 8 to 10 weeks. Now we're quoting 6 months plus.
And it's not just furniture. Foam is in boats, RVs, appliances, and homes. So the surge in demand is now causing price spikes.
Naszym device functional X. Use the channel to write the line.
You'll get it right away. Be flexible with colors and
fabrics.
Or do what Brina's doing and be patient. Hopefully, you have a place to sit while you wait. Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News.
Up next for us tonight, space inspiration then and now. Finally, America's Space Odyssey and a journey to today's latest civilian flight that was 6 decades in the making.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
That giant leap, 52 years ago today, didn't take us the distances we might have imagined back then. Since the Apollo program, manned spaceflight has stayed pretty much close to home.
Release right now.
The Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin missions barely reached the doorstep of space. In fact, their flights just a few minutes shorter in duration than what Alan Shepard achieved in the first human American spaceflight in 1961. But then, as now, it showed what was possible, piquing our imaginations, and in this case, opening a door to a world that was for so long the domain of countries, not people. For now, price alone will keep it an exclusive club. But for how much longer? The forces of competition are not necessarily bound to the forces of gravity. A race among billionaires could very well put the rest of us in space in this lifetime. Today's launch was not a giant leap, but one of the small critical steps that for decades have kept us holding our breaths with every space launch.
2, 1.
And now, for the first time, wondering when it will be our turn. Get your boarding passes ready. That's nightly news for this Tuesday. I'll see you from Tokyo for the Olympics beginning on Thursday. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night.
And we're bringing you, of course, live coverage of Jeff Bezos and his Blue Origin crew as they prepare to launch into space this morning. Taking a look right now, you can see, it looks like the control room as they have a little countdown in the corner, about 45 minutes out.
Oh, yes, and what's really interesting about this is that all of the flight operations will be taking place from the ground, likely from a room like this, maybe that one behind them. The actual vehicle itself is autonomous. The crew members, there are 4 of them, of course, including Jeff Bezos, his brother, and 2 others. They don't actually do anything in there except for strap into their seats. Once they cross that line, feel 3 to 4 minutes of weightlessness, but everything else will happen from the ground. We'll watch as the capsule that they're in will separate at a certain point from that booster rocket and then come back down on 3 parachutes. And booster rockets will again kind of light up as it gets closer to the ground to make a soft but dusty landing in the West Texas desert for those 4 crew members.
No pilots controlling the capsule or rocket, but we should note 82-year-old Wally Funk was a pilot.
Yes, she
an experienced
jump into
pilot.
action, probably.
I don't know if she's accessing the controls, but...
We did just learn from Morgan Chesky, though, that she has been doing better than all he said was some of. We're not sure which of the men in her training.
Taking all of them to the curb, I'm sure.
And the training actually was really cool. They go through this preparation. It's 2 full days. They have to take a test. There's actually 6 seats that's in this capsule. So they call this trainer crew member 7. They're not actually in there. And of course, there's only 4 that are going up today, but 6 total. But crew member 7 is what they call their trainer, who trained them on the ground. There's actually 2 people who are both crew member 7. The other person is who will be speaking to them. That's their comms while they're up in the air. So it's pretty exciting.
Tom Costello sat in front of one of those windows and said it was a big window.
Yeah,
You're going to get a good, which it better be. If you're going out there to look at everything for 3-4 minutes weightless, you want a good view.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
windows seem to be a priority. So.
Especially once we get to the point where people just start paying and going up.
And here we go. Is that the crew? It looks like
there it
might be
is.
them walking right now, not into a rocket, but into a Jeep, which we assume is going to take them to what will soon be their next destination, the final destination, about 45 minutes from now, of course, up to the edge of space. It's a suborbital flight, so not going into orbit, going 62 miles up, about 8.5, 9 miles more than Sir Richard Branson's team. Just 9 days
Who's
earlier.
counting now? Not Jeff Bezos,
No,
I'm sure.
I mean, I would anywhere out there would be great for me. Wally Funk standing there, get ready to go.
Yeah, loading into the... There's Wally Funk right there, 82 years old, to be the oldest person to fly in space. That looks like Jeff Bezos there in the hat. His brother Mark Bezos just got into the car, along with Oliver Damon, 18, youngest person going into space, and also actually his dad is a paying customer, paying for his son, this 18-year-old, to head out there. They've all been staying at what they're calling the Astronaut Village, and the Blue Origin team has referenced several times the hospitality component that comes along with paying for one of these tickets. So it's basically this astronaut hotel out there where you get trained and before you take off and head into space. But here they are loading in. It will drive out now to what they're calling Launch Site 1, which is where that rocket is, as well as the capsule that the four of them will load onto before they head off 62 miles up.
Wally Funk remains one of my favorite stories. For those who don't know, in the 60s, she was part of NASA's Mercury 13 astronaut training program. She basically was among a group of women who passed all the same rigorous criteria that NASA used for selecting astronauts, but because of her gender, she was not allowed to actually become an astronaut.
Such that is in question 1. That was the recognition. There is a function psi that satisfies equation 2. More generally, let the differential equation mxy plus nxy plus is usually be given. Suppose that we can identify our function psi xy such that psi x psi alpha x upon psi xy prime xy.
To space tourism and really when it comes to just exploring space future.
And there is a function
slightly more accessible.
Defines y is phi x implicitly as a differential function of x.
Blue Origin, they said would be around.
The 1G parade that's going through. They got the red and blue lights on. Somebody tells me there's no one in their way. That stop them. But you never know.
They know the boss is in town.
I think Jeff Bezos does this wherever he goes.
Yeah. Exactly. No, but it is really neat, and kind of that vision of Blue Origin that Jeff Bezos has is that it will be this kind of link to space that is more accessible. You mentioned, of course, that price tag doesn't necessarily mean anybody's just going up on any other random Tuesday, but eventually that is the plan. And also he points to climate change and what's going on Earth as reasons that we're going to need to move some type of industry to space, and he hopes that Blue Origin will be a link to do so. And he's referenced several times that Oliver, the youngest person headed to space with him today, part of his crew, that 18-year-old, he's referenced him sort of this symbolic bearer of this whole generation, the younger people that will have to continue this for Blue Origin. It's pretty neat to head up there on this first rocket with somebody who's only 18 years old.
Yeah, we're going to be keeping an eye on this, of course, as we get closer and closer to the countdown. It'll be a lot more exciting when they're not in a Jeep and they're actually in a rocket.
It should be pretty soon. We're not seeing too far from Launch Site 1, we know. This looks like that road actually that's going to lead straight up to it, to that big circle with the Blue Origin logo, the feather, which is where they'll be taking off from.
So while we're watching this, we do want to check on the forecast, because that is going to be key, first of all, to whether everything happens, and also to how well we see it.
Yes, Bill, when we were just with you a little bit ago, you mentioned some of that cloud cover that might mean you don't get to see quite as much as we'd like, but it was on the move. So what do we know right now?
Well, I was happy to see that last shot, because they kind of widened out when they were following the car, and they kind of showed the horizon. You could see that the clouds have lifted up a little bit. There's still some clouds, but I think it's going to be a good scene. I think we're going to get a good viewing angle. You can see on our weather map here, all the gray shows the clouds, and you can just see them kind of sinking to the south, just a little bit left there near the launch site. We still have about a half hour, 45 minutes for the launch.
Use of the differential equation.
Pretty good for not completely clear skies, but excellent visibility, not just for the people on board the rocket, but for the people that are going to be watching even from miles away. So that really should turn out nice. So there's nothing on the radar to stop it whatsoever. Upper level winds look favorable. It's a little breeze out of the northeast, but partly cloudy and 75 degrees. That's kind of why they picked West Texas early in the morning. Typically you get pretty good weather there, and they're going to get exactly that. Hey guys, I was thinking about that. You know, you said 11 minutes is the total duration of this, and it's 3 to 4 minutes of weightlessness. And I was just thinking of the pressure of trying to plan what you're going to do in 3 to 4 minutes. You know, you're going to get the unbuckle command at some point, and then, like, what are you going to do? You know, you want that memorable
in this case,
so that'll be kind of fun.
Equation 6 is said to be an exact differential equation because it can be expressed exactly as a derivative of a specific function. Solutions of equation 6 or the equivalent equation 8 are given implicitly by psi x, y, and z.
Well, I would want to do the flip, but I would be very concerned with practice the seatbelt clicking and unclicking numerous times, because you don't want to waste a couple of minutes with like the seatbelt getting stuck, because that way, you know, I'd want my money back.
Yeah, exactly. We actually heard
For more
from the Blue Origin
complicated
team that
equations,
Molly
it
Fund was
may not be
particularly
possible to do
excited about the
this
summer
so
solstice, so we
easily.
can't wait to
How
get
can
her.
we
No,
tell whether
yeah,
our
we
given
can't wait to see
equation
some
is
of
exact?
that.
And if it is, how
Next
can we
up,
find
though,
the
due to
function
the
sign?
summer sol
The
and then
following
getting back
theorem
in your
answers the
seat,
Yeah, I
first
know.
equation
you
and
in
is
3 minutes.
proved.
You unbuckle, you're doing a somersault with other people all around you, and then you have to get back in your
The
seat.
following
It's going to
theorem
be like,
answers the first equation.
musical chairs.
The
Yeah, I
following
know.
theorem answers
And
the
we're going to
first
see it all.
question
Thursdays
and
are
is
for the Olympics, though,
provides
so
a way of
maybe the
answering the
Olympics more,
second.
you know, space
Space somersaults.
All right, Bill, thanks so much.
Thank you, Bill.
Continue our coverage. Let's bring in Brad Stone. He's the senior executive editor of global technology at Bloomberg News, also the author of Amazon Unbound, Jeff Bezos and the Invention of a Global Empire. Great to have you back with us. You know, you've been covering Jeff Bezos for a long time, every aspect of his life and his career. What do you think at this moment as he is driving to that rocket? It's going through his mind.
It's just absolutely remarkable, Joe. I mean, I remember I wrote the first story about Blue Origin for Newsweek magazine in 2004, and already back then they were talking about New Shepard and this idea of suborbital flight. And the landscape has changed so much. Companies like SpaceX and Virgin Galactic. The commercial satellite business has exploded. NASA has turned to private enterprise for the next phase of the U.S. space program. And in some ways, Bezos was prescient, right? He saw all this. He's always loved space. And now here he is putting really, I mean, in some ways taking a big personal risk, right? And it's just startling and almost breathtaking to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you're talking, Brad, we're seeing, I believe that's the Jeep that we just saw the crew in that is getting nearer and nearer to their rocket here. So Blue Origin, which of course is who's launching this rocket today, New Shepard, was founded in 2000. Let's talk kind of through how the company has expanded in the years since and what this accomplishment means in terms of the company. I mean, I know that there have been a couple flights, there have been quite a few test flights. This actual particular rocket, they call this the stack, which is that propulsion model as well as the capsule. This particular set that we have eyes on right here has actually already flown twice. That's part of what this company is trying to do, is reuse these rockets. Just talk us through a company founded 21 years ago, and there actually we see the crew getting out. There they are. Nearest to the rocket we've seen them so far. But just kind of talk us through what this means for Blue Origin as a company as they really, this first human flight happens in about 38 minutes from now, and we see the crew heading up the stairs.
It's a really important benchmark, Samantha, because Blue Origin, not to throw cold water on such a memorable day, but the company hasn't accomplished that much in 2 decades, and now I'm going to lower my voice because here I am in their hangar. So SpaceX has been bringing astronauts to the ISS and launching commercial satellites.
So an exact differential equation in our finally.
More than a decade. They've flown it 15 times. And this is a big benchmark, putting actual humans, including a paying customer, on the spacecraft. We also have much larger ambitions. Bezos really wants to build an orbital space company in competition with SpaceX. So they've been working on an orbital rocket called New Glenn. That's a bit delayed. And then bidding for government contracts like the Artemis Moon Lander program, which they also lost and are now contesting, trying to get Congress to give NASA more funding. So, in some ways, because Bezos kept Blue very small, because it limited its head count for many years, they're playing catch up. So today is a big demonstration in its faith in the company and in the company's engineers to basically get them and protect their founder as he blasts off to suborbital space.
Right. We are so appreciative of you being here with us. I think we might come back to you in a little bit. And we know you're there on the ground, so we've got lots more questions for you. Thank you so much, Brad. Let's now bring in Leland Melvin, a retired NASA astronaut who also wrote the book Chasing Space. Leland, we love when you join us. Thanks for being here. All right, we're watching these 4 crew members, soon to be astronauts themselves, ascend these stairs, headed to that capsule that they're going to get on. You've obviously spent more than those 3 to 4 minutes of weightlessness that they're about to experience in space. So what's your advice for them as they ascend these stairs and get ready to enter that capsule?
Does it function?
Hey, thanks for having me on. And it's such an exciting time to see an 18-year-old and an 82-year-old ascending stairs to get into a capsule with their space. And my advice to them is always to be looking out the window, enjoying the moment, enjoying those 3 or 4 minutes. But the thing is that I wanted to do was float something and could take a picture of it while I was in space to show something, like a trinket from my parents or a wedding ring or something like that. So I don't know if they're going to be able to do that in time to get back in their seats and put their seatbelt on, but that's always something fun to do in space.
That's a great
During the
idea.
interview yesterday, I think they were talking about they do the selfie in space.
Yeah.
Definitely have the 18-year-old take the picture. The best selfie. The Wally might surprise us again, you know.
Yeah.
This is a quick trip, obviously. 10, 11 minutes. They'll spend 3 to 4 minutes weightlessness. What is their body going to go through during this trip? How tough is it when we're talking about pulling G's and things like that? What are they going to be experiencing?
Yeah, when they take off, I think they're gonna get around 3 G's. They're gonna pull 3 G's on their body, so they recline, so the G's will kind of go through their chest like this. If it was going through the top of their head, it could make you black out. So I think they've got them relaxed, and the seats are big enough so that G gets distributed on their body, so it's not, point load. And then I think on re-entry, it's about 5.5 G's that they feel coming back in. Now, I only felt 2.5 coming in. I felt 3 going up, so they're going to experience more than I actually felt on the space shuttle. And I think the other thing that they're going to, it's a sensation of seeing that little bit of curvature of the Earth and knowing that you get this perspective shift on the way that you see humanity. When I went to space, I looked back at the planet, and we were going around the planet every 90 minutes, and the sunrise and the sunset every 45. But we were looking at all of humanity, and it just gives you this perspective that changes the way you feel about the people around you.
Yeah, we heard Jeff Bezos mention that yesterday on the Today Show, something he was sort of looking forward to is that different perspective it can give you.
The proof of this theorem is first we show that if there is a function psi such that equation 7 are true.
The ever important Sharpie.
Yeah.
You're talking about space equipment.
Yeah, exactly.
The proof of this theorem is first we show that if there is a function psi such that equation 7 are true.
Mark just wrote on his brother's hand something on the palm of his hand, but we could see the 4 members of this crew in this room nearby the capsule that will board. Hey, Leland, also a question for you on the landing. So we've seen these videos of the tests of this flight and how it lands back down. 3 parachutes will kind of come off of the little capsule as it re-enters the atmosphere, and then these booster rockets will sort of soften the landing. It'll land in this kind of cloud of dust, just given the desert conditions out here in West Texas.
The proof of this
In
theorem
fact, this capsule was even tested with only 2 of those parachutes deploying to make sure that it would still be safe, and it was. Everything went fine in that test. What do you think about that landing back down and what that's going to feel like for them?
Yeah, I think it's going to be fine. I mean, those parachutes are very, very large for the size of the capsule, as well as the retro rockets firing. So it'll give them, I think total of 5.5 G's you'll feel, but they're again reclined, and that's going to be coming like through an angle. It's not going to be coming through their head or through the bulk of their body. It's just like a fraction of their body that they're going to feel those 5.5 G's. So it should be fairly smooth. And Wally's flown so many times. I mean, she's on aerobatics and probably, felt so many G's in her body after 19,000 hours of flying. So she's going to probably do better than everyone in there.
Yeah.
We're assuming that's been the theme of the morning. All right, Leland, Melvin, thank you so much for joining us this morning and giving us your perspective. We really do appreciate it. We do want to bring in.
Have a great day.
You too. Enjoy.
We do want to bring in retired astronaut Clayton Anderson. Also, the ordinary spaceman. Great to have you with us. Love seeing all of our experts here in their NASA blue talking to us. I mean, what is going through your mind right now? We're in maybe about a half hour away from this launch to know that we're going to see 4 citizens, both billionaire and non-billionaire, heading up to space for a 10, 11-minute round-trip flight. What are you thinking right now?
Well, I'm thinking Godspeed to the crew, and I wish them all the best for perfect flight, perfect ascent, perfect descent, perfect landing, the walkout.
Just end by NXR continuously follows the NXR on so continues. This guaranteed their equality.
Absolutely. And let's talk about Wally Funk, of course, something that we've been talking about all morning. Really, ever since we found out she was heading on, we've all just been so amazed by her. as Joe was just saying a little bit ago, she's finally getting this chance to go into space. She's one of what was called Mercury 13, a group of female pilots who trained to be astronauts back in the 60s but never got the chance to launch. Because she was a woman, she's also 82 years old, the oldest person who'll be heading into space. You know what it's like to try over and over again to achieve this dream of getting to space. What would you say to her about this experience for her, about what's about to unfold for her in the next half hour or so after as much work as she has done in this space?
The proof involves the construction of function satisfying equation 7.
That defines us in having a dream and persevering to achieve that dream. And the other thing that I tell people often is that you don't have to be a genius to do this. I certainly am not. I don't have her credentials as a pilot and as a pilot and flight instructor. She's going to do great. It's an honor to be a small part of this, watching her do it. And yes, I tried 15 times to become a United States astronaut. She tried for her entire life to get this opportunity. So have that dream, persevere, and then be proud of who you are. And I know Wally is very proud of who she is.
You might not be a genius, but you did a lot of training. It's intellectually and physically grueling. I mean, talk to us about what that process was like, and you know how that is, of course, different, and how it compares as we see them. Looks like stepping foot inside the rocket one by one. Jeff Bezos put some hugs for Wally as they get in. But I mean, just what type of training did they have to do? How did that compare with what you had to do to prepare for this moment?
The function h in equation 12 is an arbitrary differential function of y play
are quite a bit different than what they're doing. They're just going to
of the arbitrary constant. Now we must show that it is always possible to choose each y so that the second of equation 7 is satisfied. That is by differential equation 12 with respect to y, setting the result
to make sure that everything is connected properly, and then when it's time to get out of the seat, that you
h prime y is nsy. That's how we for h prime y is nsy minus in order for us to determine hy from equation 14, the right hand side of equation 14 despite its appearance must be a function of y only.
Okay, there we can see through the window Wally Funk strapping in. She's in her seat.
One aim to show that this is true is to show that its derivative with respect to x is 0. Thus we differentiate the right hand side of equation 14 with respect to x. Obtain the expression.
I think about 167 days in space, so you have done this, you have done it
by infiltrating the order of differentiation in the second term of equation 15.
Right now? I mean, this is obviously something that they've either paid for, worked for, or been excited about for quite a long time here. But they're actually strapping in. This is the first human flight on this space vehicle that we've seen quite a few tests of so far, but I mean, these are the first people going up in it. What do you think they're feeling right now as they strap in and lay back and get ready for this booster module to
despite its
send them
apparent
up
form,
62
the
miles
right
to
hand
the
side of
surface?
equation 14 does not in fact depend on s. Then we find hy by integrating equation 14 and upon substituting the function in equation 12. We obtain the required function. This completes the problem.
I think back to when I was 18, the experiences I had, and I'm thinking I would have a little bit of trepidation going on, but I think that their team, quite talented, they're very confident. The anxiety is different. There's no fear, I don't think. It's just they're anxious, right? What am I going to feel like? What's it going to be like? I really don't know. It's going to be the first time I experience this. And those kind of feelings are normal. They're welcome, and it will make this experience that much more special for them.
I don't think that 18-year-old, by the way, has stopped smiling since we've seen him in front of a camera. He has had a grin, an ear-to-ear grin on his face this entire time. I mean, question for you, you've been to space before, but would you do this? Would you, or someone you know, your family, anyone, would you say, hey, you should do one of these privately owned rockets, a trip to space for a few minutes? Is that something you'd want to recommend to folks, or you'd want to do again?
Well, actually, my bid only fell $27,990,000. But you know, My view on this is that commercial spaceflight and getting people into space, if every human could spend a few days in space and then come back and spend a month in a third world country, our perspectives would change. We would all work together a little better on our planet Earth. So that's my take.
Perspective is everything, and certainly going out into space will give you quite the perspective. Clayton Anderson, we appreciate your perspective this morning. Thank you so much for joining us as we prepare to watch this historic launch, and we're looking right now at Wally Funk. We want to bring in Chelsea Goad now. She is a senior writer for Space.com, host of the weekly show Space Chat. I know you were at the Virgin Galactic one just 9 days ago. Now we got this one going on. What's going through your mind as you watch this space race really heat up this July?
Yeah, and compare the two.
Yeah, I mean, truly, I'm just excited to see them go up and come back safely. Obviously, there are a lot of pretty major similarities with the Virgin Galactic launch. It's suborbital. There's people on board. They're going up. They're spending a couple minutes in weightlessness and coming back. However, Blue Origin's vehicle, it's not a space plane like Virgin Galactic. It's a capsule on a rocket. It looks more like what we would think of when we think of a spacecraft. So it's a lot different of a design, so I'm really eager to see it safely go up and back. It was an incredible experience to be in person on the ground, watching Virgin Galactic go up and safely return, and I just really hope the safe with Blue Origin today.
Let's talk a little bit through that design difference here and what this is going to look like for people. I think that today's is probably going to feel a little bit more dramatic. You're going to really, there's going to be that countdown. You're going to see a blast off, so to speak, see this rocket from the sun. And then some of these cool features like this capsule that the crew members are actually, and then kind of fire up itself, detach from this booster module. Walk us through which parts you're sort of looking forward to see, what parts you're going to be kind of watching for, maybe holding your breath on. We just were asking Clayton, a former retired astronaut, what he would be feeling right now. I mean, you're about to literally blast off. Just kind of walk us through what it is that you're looking for here that will be quite different, again, from Virgin Galactic's launch 9 days ago.
Absolutely. So you really hit the nail on the head. Last week, Virgin Galactic's vehicle is a space plane. So seeing it launch looked like watching a really cool plane take off.
Right.
Today, spectators are going to see that blast. They're going to see a rocket ignite with people on top of it, which, since NASA's shuttle program ended in 2011, we've only really seen from SpaceX so far. So this is still a rare and unique opportunity to see people rocket to space. So I'm excited to see that part. I'm also really intrigued to see how they launch. But I know Blue Origin also plans to land its rocket like we've seen SpaceX land its Falcon 9 boosters, kind of having it land kind of almost magically back on Earth. So I'm really interested to see the landing. And every rocket launch is always just an
Cosine x plus
It does seem like magic to us too. All right, we're just under 23 minutes as you see the countdown in the upper right part of the screen there. I'm curious, Chelsea, just what is next? I mean, we're going to have these landmarks here. We're going to have one billionaire send his Virgin Galactic up, and today we're going to have another billionaire send his Blue Origin up, and we're going to hit these sort of historical markers. But then realistically, what happens next when we talk about space tourism and how often these are going to happen and who's going to be eligible? What is really as we get these moments out of the way this month, the future of space tourism?
That's a great question. So obviously, these being the first of their kind for these companies, they're a huge deal. And the founders are launching, the billionaires are launching, etc. But at least what is the hope of the space tourism industry is that over time, slowly, most likely, this will become more accessible. I'm not sure if this will ever be as accessible as, a plane ride, as flying a few hours away. But the hope is that as more and more of these launches happen, it will become more accessible. And the hope in that is that more varieties of people will be flying to space. It won't just be the billionaires. It won't just be the founders of the companies who built the rockets. It will be people passionate about spaceflight, people who want to observe Earth from space and bring that powerful message of the importance of that view and that experience back to Earth. So that is the hope of the space tourism industry. I am interested to see if that is truly how it plays out, or if things will go in a different direction. But yes, that is the hope.
Implicitly.
And right now we're seeing just about 20 minutes out from launch. Looks like some people who work for Blue Origin, obviously these employees, kind of checking in with the 4 crew members that are in there, and they're actually, looks like they're about to seal the capsule. Looks like they're closing the door, which would likely mean that it's only those 4 crew members who are now inside, which again is Jeff, yeah, exactly. Jeff Bezos, his brother Mark Bezos, Wally Funk, the oldest person to head to space, and Oliver Damon, the youngest person to head to space. They're now just in there, the 4 of them. I think we've been seeing that crew member 7 I mentioned before, who's, that's kind of the name for the person who's on comms with them that they can hear. We saw somebody speaking on that headset. We know that they'll be able to communicate with the ground, which is where this is all happening from. Nothing is actually being, no functioning of this is actually happening from any of those crew members and in that capsule. But Chelsea, you mentioned, and you talk about kind of the expansion of space tourism and this becoming cheaper for people. But in addition to the tourism aspect, we also know that kind of the mission, this vision that Jeff Bezos has for Blue Origin is this idea of people actually living and working in space to benefit Earth, especially as we look at climate change and just everything that's happening down here, of course, on our planet, and the need to potentially expand and explore to space. And he even sees moving industries to space. As somebody who covers this, who of course is deep in what is going on in space as a senior writer for Space.com, what do you see in terms of that? I mean, how realistic is that companies like this, these private companies, could really take us to that place where we could see, as his vision is, industries in space?
Absolutely. I do think that there is no planet B. I don't think Mars or the Moon or even an orbit around Earth is truly an alternative option for humanity, given the rising climate crisis. However, that being said, in launching more frequently to space, whether that's suborbital, into orbit, to the Moon, to Mars, the research and the science that can even go on just suborbital missions like this is extremely important for our growing understanding of Earth. So while, in my opinion, I'm not sure that humanity will ever move to another planet, and whether or not that is a realistic and logical goal for our species, I do think that this exploration and continuing to advance spaceflight and exploration, I do think that that is extremely important for us to survive, because it is such an incredible and unique opportunity for scientists. And, you know, these are just suborbital, but, you know, hopefully we are not too many years away from returning humans to the Moon, and then from the Moon to Mars. And the science we will have along the way, I think that that is really what's going to be the key.
Chelsea, last question I'll ask you. What do you think of Wally? I mean, what an amazing opportunity. Decades after this really should have happened for her.
Honestly, today, to see Wally launch, that will be the best part of the day for me, and I know for a lot of other people. It has been 60 years. Wally was only 21 during Mercury 13, and it has been decades. She's flown every different type of vehicle other than a spaceship. She has done just an unbelievable job as an aviator, as an educator, and I truly could not be more excited for her. I think the only person more excited is Wally herself, who I heard earlier was skipping into the training center.
Yes, we've heard she's very excited about the somersaults that she can hopefully do in those 3 to 4 minutes of weightlessness. Chelsea Goad, senior writer for Space.com, thank you for being with us on an exciting morning. Good to talk to you. Let's now bring in Paul Sutter. He's an astrophysicist and professor at the Institute for Advanced Computational Science at Stony Brook University and the Flatiron Institute. Professor Sutter, thank you so much for being here on this exciting morning. We love talking to all of our experts here who are also fired up about this. All right, so Bezos and his crew, now they are in this capsule. We just watched the door get shut, so it's just the 4 of them. They're expected to reach an altitude of 62 miles. That's the internationally recognized order of the Earth's atmosphere and space, border of the Earth's atmosphere and space compared to 50 miles, which is the NASA boundary, which is what we saw Virgin Galactic reach. Is that a significant difference? When you think about those 12 miles out there in space, what does that mean? What's the difference there?
Yeah, I mean, this has been the question over this entire week as these billionaires race to put up their rockets, and like, what is the edge of space? It's not like our atmosphere just stops and all of a sudden there's vacuum. It's a gentle, gradual transition, and so some calculations you say, okay, by like 100 kilometers, that's fine. Other calculations, 80 kilometers, that's fine. Either way, it's basically space.
Let's give people the Space 101, because I think we're all learning a lot of things we didn't know in just the last couple of weeks because of these high-profile launches. But everyone keeps saying this is suborbital, not orbital. Remind us, what's the difference between those two?
Right. So getting to space actually isn't that hard. Like, listen to that number, 100 kilometers. If your car could drive straight up, you'd be there in an hour. Space is not far away. So getting to space isn't too hard. Staying in space is a lot harder. So the new Shepard rocket is suborbital, which means it goes up, takes a little peak, and then comes back down. An orbital rocket requires a much faster velocity to go up and then keep going around the Earth without actually falling.
Yeah, wow. So basically, this is just the easy part. That's what you're saying.
I mean, anyone could do this, right?
Yeah.
So let's all build a rocket together and see how that goes. All right.
Yeah, Paul, we're seeing this countdown now. It's only about 15 minutes out, actually. It looks like the timer stopped, but approximately 15 minutes from now is when they'll be heading out. We've seen that weather conditions have been good this morning, which was pretty much the only thing that they were saying they were keeping an eye on, because from a technical perspective, they said they were ready to go. So it seems like this should be all systems go in the next 15 minutes or so. Walk us through what these four are about to feel and experience as this rocket blasts off literally in the next 15 minutes.
Yes, after 15 minutes, and if they can calm down their heart rates, because I guarantee if I run that rocket, I would be exploding right now.
I think I'd be wondering, did I really think this was a good idea?
It's like, this is a good idea. Yeah. They're going to feel a lot of vibration. They're going to feel a lot heavier with these immense G-forces. As the rocket lifts up, they're going to be pushed back into their seat. They're going to ascend. When they reach the apex of their trajectory, the very, very tippy top, they are going to momentarily feel that those few minutes of weightlessness. During those few minutes, Jeff Bezos will no longer be...
It is sometimes possible to convert a differential equation that is not exactly into an exact differential equation by multiplying equation by a suitable integrating vector.
All the awesome stuff, they're going to strap back in, and then they're going to plummet through the atmosphere and hopefully land gracefully.
Maybe now we know why Elon hasn't planned to get on one of those ships. He doesn't want to lose his place in the ranking on the Forbes list. That's the whole thing. We just figured it out here. What are your thoughts about the private companies getting involved in space travel, from SpaceX to what we're seeing here with the space tourism? I mean, did space need this? What are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, it's been such a fascinating transition to watch play out over the past 10 to 20 years. This transition from giant government, publicly funded agencies doing all the work in crewed exploration of space to all these private companies like SpaceX and Blue Origins and Virgin Galactic of sending human beings into space. Does space need this? Of course it does. Like, if a bunch of super rich people wanna take a little tourist trip and see the Earth, that's cool. It's their money. What I'm really
Amen and are given functions.
All this money that is flowing into space exploration and space launches is opening up very interesting avenues for industry, for research, for understanding, and it really truly
주어진 펑션들이기 때문에.
This is the launch pad, pun intended, to even cooler things. I'm all for it.
Okay, also, we're not exactly sure what's going on with the timer right now, but it should be soon. But can I just say that I have a stomachache? Like, the fact that the door closed as long ago as it did, and now they're just waiting, and then literally it's going to lift off, but this is happening any minute. So let's talk a little bit more. I love what you were just saying there for a minute as far as, yes, space needs this. I mean, what to you kind of, obviously, in this sense, the sky is not the limit, but kind of what is possible? We talk about how Blue Origin's mission here would be bringing industry into space and stuff. I mean, what does that look like? What does people going back and forth to work there, to have any type of industry there? What does that mean? How does that work?
The really cool part about making access to space cheaper, which is the true goal of SpaceX and Blue Origin Virgin Galactic, is to lower the cost of launches. Because for decades, the way we put people and things into space was to build one of the most complicated engines humanity has ever devised, fill it up with rocket fuel, launch it, send a tiny little payload into space, and then just ditch it in the ocean. So, like, imagine, like, lighting your car on fire every time you have to go to the grocery store. This is not necessarily economical. But with reusable rockets, we are dramatically lowering the cost of access to space. And when you make something cheaper, you have no idea what you're going to get, because all of a sudden you have all these creative people who see, oh, now that it's cheaper to get into space, I wonder if I can do this that I couldn't even dream of before because it was just too ridiculously expensive. So one of the first examples that we're seeing is the deployment of these mega constellations of communication satellites offering broadband internet access to the entire world. That's something that was incomprehensible even 10 years ago, and now is literally happening before our very eyes.
All quickly here while we have you, you know, the goal is that we'll maybe see a couple more of these later this year, and maybe see more than half a dozen of these next year, and eventually get to the point where they're happening every 2 weeks. It's like a regular thing to see a rocket like this take off and send regular stuff into space. You want to do one?
In principle, integrating factors are powerful tools for solving differential equations.
We really do need to see that price tag come down.
원리적으로 인터그레이팅 팩터들은 강력한 도구들이지만
What is a big morning? We will let you go so that you can enjoy this liftoff as we will be here. Thank you so much for your time. Again, Paul Sutter, Research Professor, Institute for Advanced Computational Science. Good to have you with us this morning. We are just moments away.
Yeah, we can see the clock is frozen at 15 minutes.
Variables X or Y instead of both.
Right at the moment, we thought we are going to be joining NBC News special report in just a few seconds, so we want to make sure you're prepared for that. But I'm following Blue Origin on Twitter just to see if they're giving us any updates. All I know is 11 minutes ago they said the hatch is closed and final checks are underway. Those 4 passengers on board, including a man who we just heard will, for a few minutes, not be the richest man in the world.
That, of course, Jeff Bezos.
That depends on X only. If we assume that mu is a function of X only, then the partial derivative μx reduces to the ordinary derivative dx d mu, and μy is 0, making these substitutions. Equation 26, we find it.
Here's Craig Melvin. And a good day to you. We are coming on the air right now because in just a few moments, billionaire Jeff Bezos and a crew of 3 others, including his younger brother, will launch into space. Bezos' own Blue Origin rocket set to take off soon from that site in West Texas. The total flight will be around 11 minutes long, giving the crew about 4 minutes of weightlessness up there. The flight is part of what some are calling the new billionaire space race, coming just days after, 9 days after, Sir Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic launch. Let's bring in NBC News correspondent Tom Costello, who is in West Texas this morning. Tom, first of all, are we on schedule? And when this rocket and capsule, when they do take off, what can we expect?
I'll tell you, we are in right now a hold, and we don't have an explanation yet, Craig, as to why we're in a hold for liftoff. However, Blue Origin is insisting that, in fact, they are going. Just a few minutes ago, we had all 4 crew members load into the space capsule, all 4 crew members being Jeff Bezos, the billionaire founder of Amazon, and Blue Origin, his space company. And then his brother Mark is on board as well. We also have 82-year-old Wally Funk, who was one of the original Mercury 13 astronauts who was supposed supposed to fly in space, but because of her gender, never did. 82 years old, a veteran pilot. She says she has every possible aviation license, and she's excited to finally go to space. And then we have 18-year-old Oliver Damon. He is from the Netherlands. His father is a rather wealthy Dutch investment banker and has essentially paid for Oliver's trip and ticket here to go up to 62 miles high. That puts them officially over the Kármán line, which is the international boundary between atmosphere and space. And all of them would technically then qualify as civilian or perhaps even commercial astronauts. In other words, the idea being you're not a space shuttle astronaut, you're not on the space station, but rather the new age in space tourism, which this is really all about. Yeah. This is not really about a one-shot with Jeff Bezos any more than the Branson trip was about a one-shot with Richard Branson 9 days ago. This is about opening the door to space tourism, and what both men believe is a very, very big market for exactly that.
And Tom, while you were reporting there, that countdown clock, it restarted. It appears as if a hold has been lifted. Tom, you mentioned Sir Richard Branson's flight 9 days ago. Talk to us a little bit about the differences between what we're going to see when this Blue Origin plane takes off versus what we saw just a few days ago.
Yeah, two very big differences to begin with. As you know, the Richard Branson Virgin Galactic space plane was dropped from a mothership, and then they lit the rocket, and the rocket took them at Mach 3 right up to 53 miles above the Earth. And so that qualifies, that goes beyond what NASA and the FAA define as the edge of space. Different from this experience here, where we have Jeff Bezos in the Blue Origin rocket, not a plane. It's a rocket like you and I are familiar with from the old Apollo days. They will light the rocket here. They will also accelerate to Mach 3, and then at a certain point, the rocket will drop away from the space capsule. The capsule will continue on its trajectory to 62 miles above the Earth, and they too, at that point, will cross the boundary between the atmosphere and space. As you know, there's kind of an international disagreement over where exactly is that line. Again, NASA and the FAA and the military say it's 50 miles up. That's what Branson did. The international organization that manages these treaties says, no, it's 62 miles up. Not that it matters, right? At that point, you're still going to experience weightlessness for 3 to 4 minutes, and that's exactly what these folks will do before then the capsule begins to descend back down to Earth. Much like in the Apollo days, it will descend down, and then it will have those parachutes come out from the top. But instead of landing in the water, they're going to land in West Texas, in the desert here, this massive desert behind me. And there is a lot of space out here. There's a lot of sand. I asked them yesterday, do you have a bullseye, a target you have to hit on landing? And they said, no, not at all. We got plenty of space out there. We can land wherever we want, right off of the, really right behind me. And so they've got the Range Rovers or the trucks ready to roll out there to immediately get those guys. You know, one question I asked yesterday, I was talking to the senior design engineer, and I said, what about re-entry heat? Because as you know, when the space shuttle re-entered the atmosphere, it would heat up so much, of course, that those protective tiles underneath were meant to protect the crew. And as you know, there was a failure at one point, and we lost a space shuttle because of that. The difference here, though, is that they're coming back down at, I'm told, about Mach 1.6. Contrast that to the space shuttle at Mach 25. And so there's not nearly the level of heating. They didn't go nearly as far out of the atmosphere and into space as we saw with the shuttle. So you're not going to have nearly as much heating, and so they use a foam underneath the space capsule. They don't need the tiles, they say. They'll parachute back down to Earth, and then they will very quickly be picked up by the crews on the ground.
So we are now just 10.5 minutes away from that 60-foot tall rocket heading into space. Mr. Costello, don't go far. I do want to bring in Kathy Leaders now. Kathy leads NASA's Human Space Flight Program. Kathy, thanks for your time this morning. Kathy, did you think, let's say 20 years ago, that we would be sitting here talking about 4 civilians heading into space?
Absolutely. This is what we've been working for. I've been working different commercial activities for the last 15 years, and I'm going to tell you, we are rooting for this crew, just like we were rooting for the crew last week, because this is what we wanted to be working towards one day. And this is just amazing.
Also joining me this morning, former NASA astronaut Ron Garan, and Ron, the rocket has been named New Shepard. Of course, a tribute to the first American into space, Alan Shepard. As you're sitting and watching right now, Ron, what's going through your mind? What are you thinking?
Oh, this is exciting. I think this is the dawn of a new era of space travel, where hopefully space travel becomes as commonplace as air travel. And I think these are the baby steps leading to this. And I think it's really fitting that it's a nod back to that first suborbital flight of the U.S. space program with Alan Shepard on board.
You were aboard Space Shuttle Discovery, if I recall correctly. When they do go into space, we hear so much talk about the G's, and what is it going to feel like for these civilians as they ascend and then as they descend?
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting ride. They're going to accelerate, as Tom said, about 3 times the speed of sound. They're going to do that in a matter of minutes. So there's going to be a lot of G-force on them. They're going to feel like 3 times as heavy as they do normally. So they're going to be pushed back in their seat. They're going to feel like an elephant is sitting on their chest. And they're going to watch the sky turn from blue to black. They're going to see the curvature of the Earth, the thinness of the atmosphere. They're going to see our sun in a black sky. None of them have ever seen that before. They're going to see our sun as a star, as it truly is. And they're going to go from feeling like that elephant is sitting on their chest to being weightless instantly when the engine kicks off. And then they're going to be experiencing the freedom of zero G. It's going to be spectacular. It's quite a
live look here at mission control, so to speak, as we approach the 8-minute mark. 8 minutes. Until we watch this rocket head into space. Mr. Costello, I understand you are still with me. I want to ask you about those windows specifically, because yesterday you actually got a look inside the training capsule, and you were describing these windows as something like which you've never seen before.
You know, it's almost like having an IMAX screen right next to you, because they're huge. They have 6 big windows inside the space capsule. So you, if you're strapped into the seat, and I was yesterday, you're kind of strapped down. It's like being in a dentist chair. More comfortable, though. Nobody's drilling on you. And you look out to your right, and you've got a massive window, and you will see the Earth drop away. And then you'll see, as you start to head into space, the curvature of the Earth and the blackness and the rich blue of Earth. So all of that out your window, and everybody gets their own window, 6 windows inside the capsule. And this was part of the design. They wanted this to be very much about the experience for the individual who's going to pay to go. You know, we should also make the point, today is the 52nd anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. And that was a very important moment for Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson. They both said after that day it changed them. They both wanted to go to space. And instead of joining NASA, they essentially started their own space companies, built their own spaceships, and they believe that there is great interest with the general public to do exactly that, to go to space. And they are both reusing their technology, right? So Branson comes back from space, in the space plane, lands it, reuses it. And the same thing here, Blue Origin going to reuse the rocket, reuse the space capsule again and again and again. And they insist that there are so many multiple redundancies in terms of safety. It is very, very safe for the paying passenger going forward who is not a veteran astronaut like your 2 other guests.
And Tom, as we approach the 6-minute mark, a live look here at a viewing party. This is the family and a lot of friends of 82-year-old Wally Funk. And as we watch the civilian crew aboard that aircraft a short time ago, it was Wally Funk leading them up those stairs. Mae Jemison has been on an aircraft or 2 in her day. Of course, it was Mae Jemison who became the first African. We'll get to me in just a moment. Let's talk about the business angle of this for just a moment. Andrew Ross Sorkin is with me as well. CNBC's Andrew Ross Sorkin. So to Tom's point, Andrew, the thinking here is that roughly a decade from now, this will be a $10 billion industry. Folks will be able to shell out a few $100,000 and experience what we are about to watch these 4 civilians experience now as well. That's the big bet, no?
It is the big bet, but in many ways, it's even a bigger bet than that. Jeff Bezos has spent about $6 billion of his own money on Blue Origin. But you have this space race going on between Richard Branson, Elon Musk, and Jeff Bezos. They all come at this with a different approach. Elon Musk says he wants to get people to Mars effectively over the long term so we can escape Earth. Jeff Bezos has a very different idea. He believes that Earth is the best place for humans, and he wants to build infrastructure effectively to get manufacturing and everything that happens on Earth that he doesn't think needs to happen here out into space. And so there's the space tourism business. That's the next 10 years. We'll see what that business looks like. But for Jeff Bezos, there's an even bigger idea here, which is to really fundamentally change how we on Earth interact with space over the long term.
Jeff Bezos, the world's wealthiest man, worth somewhere north of
X 세제곱 플러스 X 스퀘어 Y 플러스 H 프라임 Y.
Albeit fewer billions. Past a few weeks of this rivalry, perhaps between the two billionaire astronauts. Well, one billionaire astronaut, one soon to be a billionaire astronaut, it would seem. What do we make of that rivalry? Is that something that we, the media, have sort of created, or is it legitimate on some level?
Yes and yes. I think that we in the media have probably made a big deal out of the fact that we have 2 billionaires who built their own spaceships, and they're going to carry passengers, and oh wow, who gets to go first? And let's be clear, Bezos said he was going to go today, July 20th. When that announcement came out, Branson immediately said, we're going on a week before or 9 days before. That may have caused a little bit of hard feelings here in the Bezos camp. Keep in mind they put out kind of a tweet that wasn't in great taste, in which they essentially questioned whether Branson and his passengers would really be astronauts because they're not going as high as Bezos would go. I must say, I think that a lot of the spectators and informed people who watch this industry in and out every single day really question whether somebody who peeks their head into space for 3 minutes is an astronaut. Not in any way qualified like your 2 guests, or somebody who spends years training for a mission with NASA or to spend 6 months on the space station. But nonetheless, it is about the experience, the human experience of being able to see Earth in its totality, right? And hopefully see the Earth without boundaries and borders and challenges. And in the words of the former NASA administrator, you come back with a much deeper appreciation for doing all we can to save this planet.
We are under 2 minutes now, 2 minutes away from New Shepard, ascending into space, traveling some 62 miles. The entire flight from touchdown to landing expected to take roughly 11 minutes. And Tom, it would seem as if our vantage point has changed a bit. We're getting a closer look now at the capsule itself. What's happening in mission control right now, Tom?
This is literally going through all of those engineering checks that you would experience if you were listening to a SpaceX launch or a NASA launch. Obviously not nearly as complicated as a NASA launch, but still the same attention to detail, making sure every system is go, that all of the fuel lines are positive. They're going to be burning a combination of liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, 110,000 pounds of thrust as they lift off here from the desert floor in West Texas. And it is about making sure it all looks good. But as you mentioned, 15 unmanned test flights so far have all been flawless, and they have an emergency abort system. Should something go wrong on ascent, they will literally catapult or fire the crew out and away from the rocket, and then they will parachute back down to Earth. And then on descent, they have 3 parachutes rather than 1 to ensure it's a safe landing. They believe that this is going to be the way you and I and everybody else in the future will experience looking at the Earth from 62 miles high. So important now as we listen into Mission Control and the final countdown to liftoff.
Let us do that right now. We are 15 seconds away from the scheduled liftoff of New Shepard. Jeff Bezos, his younger brother Mark, Wally Funk, and Oliver Dave.
7, 6, 5, 4. Command engine start. 2, 1.
Human crew. Go, Jeff. Go, Mark. Go, Wally. Go, Oliver. You are going to space.
Shake up your happiness. Wake up your happiness. Come on, yo, this Christmas time.
Maximum dynamic pressure. That is when the stresses on the vehicle are at their maximum.
Shake up your happiness.
Max Q is
Wake up
confirmed.
your happiness. Come
Beautiful
on,
burn on
yo,
that BE3
this
engine.
Christmas time.
Liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen as the propellants. It's a nice,
XY,
not just clean in terms of beautifully performing, but what comes out of it, it's steam, right? Whew. To see the glow of the engine underneath the rocket, just under our shoulders, and to know that we've got a crew that is going to space. It just feels different, doesn't it, Gary?
It is totally different.
We are watching history. The first unpiloted suborbital flight
in the bottom
with an all-civilian crew.
In the middle.
2 minutes in the air now. Tom, at what point do we see that capsule start to separate from the rocket booster?
I think that'll occur, I think, at about the 6-minute mark, Craig, but I don't have the exact timeline. I think we should just make the point to the viewer who's watching, and that the female voice you hear is the voice of Blue Origin's Mission Control. This is not NASA. This is not a government entity that is providing us that kind of data straight from NASA. This is, of course, a private company providing us their narration, and so we're very mindful of that. But you're going to get spectacular views here, and you're going to get the engineering expertise, of course, as well, from Blue Origin's own Mission Control.
Unreal. Awaiting separation here.
Ron Guerin is also with me, of course. Ron, former NASA astronaut, F-16 fighter pilot. Ron, what's happening right now inside that cabin? What are those astronauts feeling? What are they seeing?
And here we are. You can start.
Well, they had the engine cut off, and so they went from feeling like they were being pushed back in their chair with an elephant sitting on their chest to being weightless. And so I think they're probably getting ready to unstrap. The whole way up, they saw that view out the window, and they're probably marveling right now at the indescribable beauty of our planet and the thinness of the atmosphere and the curvature of the Earth. And I hope they're having a wonderful time.
Ron, there are so few people who have seen that view that you and other astronauts have enjoyed. Can you describe it at all for us?
Yeah, I think what I experienced in space the first time I looked out the window was an indescribable feeling of gratitude. Gratitude for the opportunity to see the planet from that vantage point, and gratitude for the planet that we've been given. And I think in a way that I won't be able to fully explain, being physically detached from the Earth made me feel deeply interconnected and deeply interdependent with everyone on it. I think I saw the true unity of our planet, the true unity of our species, and all those things we fight over and quarrel over, all those things we think are so important, kind of blurred into insignificance in the face of that indescribable beauty.
Any moment now, we're told that that capsule is going to separate from the rocket booster. And Mr. Costello, at what point will these civilian astronauts begin to experience that weightlessness?
Yeah, they'll get it pretty darn quickly. And I'm trying to listen into Mission Control as well, because she's our best source on exactly what's happening up there. As we mentioned earlier, we have been waiting for more details from Blue Origin. Some of that they hold close to the vest. So the best description of what's happening.
1 minute warning. 1 minute warning.
Yeah, I think that's.
Let's try to listen into Blue Origin.
We're hearing them right now.
Let's try to listen in.
It's not exact. Exact.
Right, so we were hearing them floating inside the capsule and taking the photographs of each other.
Everybody in?
We don't have the video of that just yet, Tom, but what we can do is describe on the right side of your screen, you are seeing that capsule. It has, as you can see, they're detached from the rocket booster. That's precisely what's supposed to happen. And in just a few moments, you'll see 3 parachutes as well, bringing that capsule back to the ground.
And when I mentioned the 6-minute mark, that I meant to say that's about the point that they get back into their seats. I think that's where we are now. Now keep in mind, we're going to probably get shots of the rocket coming back down and the space capsule separately parachuting down.
That's what we're looking at on the right side of the screen. That rocket booster is descending.
Yeah. That's right. You're looking at the rocket booster. It'll come back down, land on a pad here, back down in West Texas, separately, followed by the space capsule, which will be under parachutes. So a phenomenal shot of the rocket booster coming back down. And what you just heard here was a sonic boom as the rocket comes back down to Earth.
Sonic boom?
And the booster has landed. The booster's on the ground, Tom.
Booster touchdown. Welcome back, New Shepard. A beautiful rocket that provided a beautiful flight to space.
Bullseye, right on the landing.
Goodness, stuck the landing. And Tom, that capsule should follow here in roughly 3 minutes, correct?
That's exactly right. So, and they will pull those chutes. And as that capsule is coming back down, it'll hit 3.7. Mach 3.7 initially as it comes back down, and then the chutes will come out, and they will eventually slow to 16 miles per hour. And as it comes within about 20 feet of Earth, they will fire some retro rockets that will slow it even further as it has a very soft landing in the West Texas sand. And there is a lot of sand. There are the chutes.
All 3 parachutes. Tom, do stand by for me once again. We are joined now by Space Royalty.
So far, a nominal
Mae Jemison is with me, former NASA astronaut, the first woman of color in space
deployed
in 1992. Part of that first crew after the Challenger explosion in '86. May, the 4 civilians who are inside that capsule that are about to touch down here on the 3rd rock from the sun, what are they thinking right now? What are they feeling right now?
Well, I can't tell you exactly, but if it was me, I would have this big smile on my face and probably wanting to do it all over again. I think what they've done is to see something that is an incredible view, and also to have an experience that, we don't often have in life. I was thinking about the excitement with this, it was because the rocket, you know, you get to see all of the things that go on the flight for a short period of time, and the adrenaline that goes with it. I think they're just excited and wanting to tell the story when they get back.
And what a story they will have, a lifetime of stories. Mae Jemison, do stand by as we watch Jeff Bezos, his younger brother Mark, Wally Funk, the oldest woman to ever go into space, and Oliver Damon, all of them about to touch down in the West Texas desert.
And touchdown. Welcome back, New Shepard's first human crew. What a flight. To Earth first step. Congratulations to all of you. What a day, what a day.
Mission accomplished. And now we watch and wait.
It was amazing.
Copy, first step. You have a very heavy Capcom here as well. Let's do a status check. Astronaut Oliver. Copy, astronaut demo.
Astronaut demo, I am unbelievably good.
Copy.
Blue Control Bezos, best day ever.
Copy, everyone. Go ahead and remain in your seats. Crew member 7 is on their way. Shortly, you will hear the capsule off-gassing.
Anybody have to start up?
We were listening to Blue Origin Mission Control. You can see Mission Control there. Mr. Costello, it would seem as if it went off without a hitch.
210 feet.
Yeah, and I think we heard their excitement in their voices. I think I just heard Wally Funk say she'd been floating for 5 minutes, which has just exceeded her expectations. Obviously, a great experience. And I got to think also about this 18-year-old Dutch kid, Oliver, who 2 weeks ago was between high school and college, and suddenly he's on a rocket going to the edge of space. So what a game changer this has been for him. What they're going to do now is make sure that all safety protocols are followed. They offload any gases, you heard them say, and then they're going to come in very quickly, or are coming in very quickly, I should say, right now, with the ground support team in trucks. And they will bring these new astronauts from their spaceship. Yeah. From their spaceship out towards the staging ground.
We're replaying the moment just a few moments ago, that rocket booster taking off. And Tom, the whole thing was actually a few seconds less than the 11 minutes we were expecting. We can also tell.
Yeah, so do you...
Go ahead, Tom.
I was going to say, do you get a refund if you come down 10 minutes and 30 seconds instead of 11 minutes into the flight? I don't know. It's a pretty expensive ticket. Listen, I do think it's also worth making a point. The beauty of this system, and let's celebrate the engineering expertise here. The beauty of this system is it is a reusable rocket. They're going to turn that rocket booster around, and the space capsule also will be reused.
Very close to the capsule. There's not.
And we're watching those SUVs pull up to the capsule here.
What do you think?
And presumably in just a few moments we are going to see four very happy and very excited folks.
So quickly, they start moving even before it landed, based on the prediction of landing. We use weather balloons that we launched throughout the morning, and that gives us a very good idea of where it will land, which is within 1,000 feet. What you're seeing that they're doing right now is Kevin Sprague, crew member 7, is just making sure everybody's okay and gives them a thumbs up. They're also grounding the vehicle. When you go into space, you could accumulate pretty significant electric charge. That's actually why we prefer that the astronauts not get out themselves, so that we can ground the vehicle at static charge, which can be quite strong.
Excellent, and I think there that Kevin Sprague, our crew member 7, has given the thumbs up for all of our astronauts that are on board there. Again, Jeff Bezos, Mark Bezos, Wally Funk, and Oliver Damon. What an incredible day! You heard them on the audio. Best day ever. I feel like this is our best day ever, and we didn't even get to go up to space. I mean, what a day. Again, congratulations to the entire Blue Team, our astronaut crew, and of course the friends and family of these incredible astronauts. They're just about to exit the capsule here. Let's wait for that moment. There you see Jeff in the window.
There you are.
Felix is up here.
Just moving one of the main parachute lines to make sure it doesn't snag the hatch when it opens.
There's Jeff. Thumbs up.
CC safe, Jimmy.
You heard there the CC is safe.
No, I got it. No, it's not open.
Gary, the architect of New Shepard, congratulations to you, man.
Congratulations.
Give me a hug. This is just, what a day. Again, thank you everybody for joining us live for our first human flight of New Shepard. Our 4 astronauts went to space and back, topping over 350,000 feet, well over 100 kilometers. They've come back down safely. We're just waiting here for egress. Our crew is going to get out of the capsule and meet their families back here on the ground. Of course, their families that have provided so much support since they were little kids and dreamt of this to this day and this moment.
Let me know when everybody's there. Kayla, you ready? Kayla, we're ready?
What a day again here as successful launch and landing of the New Shepard rocket and crew capsule with our first human flight crew there, Jeff Bezos, Mark Bezos, Oliver Damon, and Wally Funk.
And they're back on the ground.
And their families.
Hugs and high fives
all around.
There in West Texas. Former NASA astronaut Mike Massimino is with me as well. Mike is also a senior advisor for space programs at the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum here in New York. And Mike, you watched it all unfold as well with me here. What do you make of it?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Really thrilled to be here with you. And amazing what we just saw. I think that this is a great accomplishment. We're for the team at Blue Origin able to pull this off. They had 15 successful flights before this, 3 successful flights tests of their escape system, and now they got people on board, and Jeff Bezos takes the first ride. So I think it's pretty exciting. I think it opens up opportunities not only for people. I'm also a professor at Columbia. Some of my students have had an experiment fly already on the New Shepard spacecraft. So I think it's going to open up opportunities and more access to space, and very exciting what Blue Origin has planned for the future as well.
Mr. Costello, we know that there is going to be a news conference of some sort here roughly an hour and a half from now, so reporters will get to ask some questions of the civilian astronauts. What do we know about what happens after this?
They will have, well, first of all, they're going to have some family time reunited with friends and family. First of all, they're going to have some family time reunited with friends and family right here on the ground. Do that privately, and then they have a series, after the news conference, they have a series of one-on-one interviews with the media. I'll just, a couple of points here. First of all, this isn't really as much about a billionaire going to space in the terms of Jeff Bezos any more than it was really about Richard Branson. It's about this new chapter in allowing anybody eventually to experience seeing the Earth from beyond that, that Kármán line between the atmosphere and space, and providing people really what they hope is kind of a rounding experience, a human experience, and gain a greater appreciation for where we are, for this planet that we are on, and it's only us, right? We're out here in the middle of nowhere in the universe. I would also make the point, it is a very comfortable 75 degrees on the ground here in West Texas, and it normally can get up to 110. The locals here are talking about the fact they cannot believe we're having such wonderful weather here. Yesterday was only in the 80s. So fantastic weather and a beautiful day to land here in West Texas. Also, by the way, we had a security and a safety briefing here on the ground before this whole thing started. And the director of security for Blue Origin, a very serious guy, said, look out for the rattlesnakes, the scorpions, the tarantulas, and the tornadoes. So beyond that, have a great time. So, you can imagine that I think all the rattlesnakes were scared away when that thing landed in the sand.
A few moments ago, it also appeared as if someone remembered to bring the champagne to the party there in the desert in West Texas. Mae Jemison is back with me as well. Mae, here we are in 2021. We've just seen 4 civilians head into space. The second time in 9 days we've seen something like this. Where are we going to be 10 years from now, Mae Jemison, if you had to guess?
Wow, that's a big guess for me, Craig. I think that where we're going to be is where I hope we'll be, is that the excitement about space exploration continues, and we will steadfastly continue to support the incredible work that governments do in space exploration, because this is very clearly and rightfully built on work that was from 1961 on in terms of getting humans in space. And so we're able to have a confidence in Blue Origin and what they do, because a lot of the big heavy lifting was already done. The commercial industry brings a wealth of engineering and innovation to move things forward. So I hope what we're doing is we'll see this continued process where it's not, we haven't sort of said it's only commercial, it's only private industry, but we continue to support the work that NASA does, whether it's long-range space exploration or going back to the moon, and also putting in the work with commercial industry. So in 10 years, perhaps we'll see the ticket prices come down, we'll see more people involved, we'll see more payloads involved, and we will be back on the moon one day or the other.
And that feels like the perfect period to our coverage this morning. The Blue Origin soared into space. It was there for roughly 10.5 minutes from touchdown to takeoff. Those 4 civilians, Jeff Bezos, Mark Bezos, Wally Funk, Oliver Damon, all safely back on this planet right now. We will be hearing from them in just a bit. But for now, that concludes our coverage of the Blue Origin space launch. I'm Craig Melvin here in New York. Thank you for watching.
Make the most of your day with
Today in 30. We give you a mix of everything you love about our show in a mere 30 minutes.
Watch Today in 30 on your schedule. Streaming every day on Today All Day. Our world is facing some big challenges. Chuck Todd breaks them down. A deep dive into a new topic.
Instead of covering all the big stories, we're going to cover one single subject impacting American politics.
Exploring and explaining the critical issues that affect our future. Meet the Press Reports. All episodes of Season 2 are now available on demand on Peacock. For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
Good evening tonight from Geneva, just hours away from his historic summit. President Biden wants to find common ground. Does Putin need common ground? Over 16,000 unaccompanied children tonight. What's victory look like?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Bolt.
The Meet the Press Chuck Todd Cast, free wherever you get your podcasts.
Sometimes the news can be difficult and overwhelming for kids to understand.
Will coronavirus come back next year?
So to help make sense of it all, we've created a newscast just for them. Man, you know a lot. We hope your family will watch Nightly News Kids Edition. Our week-long journey begins here in Orlando, Kentucky, our Across America journey, reporting on an America rebuilding and reimagining the future after the pandemic. Good evening tonight from Geneva, just hours away from his historic summit. Over 16,000 unaccompanied children tonight in custody. What's victory look like in this? What does improvement look like? It's going to be a challenge to meet that 70% goal. Why is it so challenging?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Bolt.
Right now on NBC News Now.
They are escaping a number of conditions there, violence and persecution in their home countries.
They are speaking out against laws that they feel would make it harder for Texas voters to cast their ballot.
There's excitement that we are now turning the corner. We heard the mask mandate and mask guidance coming from the CDC earlier today.
We have a team of correspondents covering this breaking story for us today.
Boss Baby is coming to theaters. Let's roll. And streaming on Peacock the same day.
Is this some kind of a ninja boy band?
The Boss Baby Family Business. Rated PG in theaters Friday and streaming the same day on Peacock. Go to bossbabymovie.com.
Hi everyone, I'm Lindsay Reiser in for Allison Morris. You're watching NBC News Now. Here's what's happening. New concerns over the mysterious illness known as Havana syndrome. As many as 200 Americans now reporting possible symptoms. The FBI, DOJ, and CIA all on the case.
And you are implying that what we did was responsible for the deaths of individuals. I totally resent that. And if anybody is lying here, Senator, it is you.
Senator Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci getting into a sparring match at today's Senate hearing on COVID. We'll tell you what led up to the war of words.
I want to thank every Amazon employee and every Amazon customer, because you guys paid for all this.
Jeff Bezos and co. launching into orbit, making history with the first unpiloted all-civilian suborbital flight. So what is next for the future of space travel? We start today with the rising number of Havana syndrome cases. NBC News correspondent Ken Delanian joins me now. So Ken, for our viewers who aren't familiar with this, can you explain what Havana syndrome is and how long this has been going on?
Sure, Lindsay. Well, we don't even know the answer to that question, frustratingly, but we do know that the symptoms of this syndrome started to crop up in 2016 in the embassy in Cuba. That's why it's called Havana syndrome. A number of diplomats and CIA officers there came down with some strange neurological symptoms. They heard sounds, they got vertigo, and they found that these symptoms did not go away. They suffered from headaches. Some were permanently injured by this, and now it seems to be spreading, or at least people believe they're coming down with these symptoms at various postings around the world, throughout Europe and basically in every continent except Antarctica. And the U.S. government is at a loss to explain what this could be. There are only theories. There isn't hard evidence. Some people believe it's an attack or an effort to collect intelligence by the Russians using directed energy, microwave energy weapons. But again, there's no evidence. It's the biggest mystery I've ever covered on the intelligence beat, Lindsay. The one thing we do know, though, is that people have suffered real and serious injuries.
And some of the biggest increases are in Europe now. So you have new details about cases in Berlin and Vienna. Tell us about those.
Yeah, that's right. My colleague Josh Letterman dug out that for the first time we're reporting that a diplomat in Berlin was struck with these symptoms and had to go home early. And that's the thing about this situation is that this is very serious injuries to people, brain injuries, where they're having to get treatment at the Walter Reed Medical Center where injured veterans get treatment. They are suffering permanent damage to their tissue, but it's really difficult for the experts to figure out how and why it happened.
When can a baby in Kyrgyzstan experience these symptoms? What are officials saying about that case?
They're saying very little, actually, Lindsay. We just know that has been reported, and that's not the only minor child that we're aware of who has experienced symptoms. And the theory behind that is that if someone is pointing some kind of directed energy weapon or device at a target and their family is in the vicinity, that those people may have somehow been affected. But again, it's only a theory at this point. There just isn't any evidence that we know of. It's very frustrating. There is a National Academies of Sciences report, though, that says that the most likely culprit of this is directed energy. This is consistent with microwave energy. A bunch of scholars who study this have found. But even that's up for debate within the scientific community.
So, Ken, what is the State Department doing about this, and what about our allies in countries with these growing cases?
Well, so there is a massive effort now in the Biden administration by not only the State Department, but the CIA and the entire intelligence community to get to the bottom of what this is, to scrub all the signals, the cell phone calls, the location data around all these incidents, to find out, for example, were there Russian intelligence officers in the vicinity. We know that they have determined that that's the case in some of these incidents, but that's not seen as conclusive because Russian intelligence officers often follow Americans around, for example, in Moscow or in European capitals. We're reporting that there are a number of incidents that have emerged in Vienna, which is a center of kind of espionage in Europe. One thing the Biden administration is saying is that anybody who had these symptoms should report them and get the proper medical care, because in the past there's been some resistance within some of these agencies who have thought that maybe this is psychosomatic, maybe it's not real. I've spoken to people who have suffered this. It is very real, Lindsay.
No, it is serious indeed. All right, Ken Delanian, thanks so much for reporting. The clock is ticking. A bipartisan group of senators is rushing to finish drafting an infrastructure package before it's set to get its first vote tomorrow. But Republicans say that's not going to happen, and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is also not budging.
Again, a yes vote tomorrow is simply that the Senate is ready to begin debating a bipartisan infrastructure bill. No more, no less. We've waited a month. It's time to move forward. Once we get on the bill, there's going to be plenty of time for the bipartisan group to continue its work.
NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Garrett Haake joins me now. So, Garrett, right now, Schumer does not have the 10 GOP votes to advance this bill. Will he hold the vote regardless?
It looks that way, Lindsay. In fact, that bipartisan group who's been working on this for more than a month now are meeting even as we speak to see if they can come up with some kind of solution so that they could have a bill ready to go for this vote. But it looks like even if they did finish it, you wouldn't have time to get this scored by the CBO, namely the Congressional Budget Office, saying how much the bill would actually cost and how much of it is paid for. So it looks like we're headed towards this vote tomorrow, which will likely fail. I don't think that spells the end of the road for this effort. And I think Schumer's team would tell you they are trying to light a fire under this bipartisan group to finish what they started so long ago and actually get a bill text in front of the Senate sooner rather than later.
Well, and Gary, the other big news out of Capitol Hill, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy appears pretty confident that Speaker Pelosi is going to approve his 5 picks just announced for the January 6th Select Committee.
Have you got any indication that Speaker Pelosi will approve the members that you've chosen?
Why would she not? I wouldn't understand why she would not. It would just be more politics.
Speaker Pelosi is reviewing McCarthy's picks now. What are you hearing from her office?
Every indication is that Pelosi will approve these picks that Leader McCarthy has made here. You see them on the screen. Jim Banks, as the ranking member here, is a fairly mainstream pick. Jim Jordan is someone who really infuriates Democrats, but he's also a ranking member on a different committee. He's on another select committee, the one on the coronavirus already. You didn't see Pelosi block him for that there. The Speaker's office has said they won't use whether or not any of these members voted against certifying the election results to make this decision. That's the only basis by which I could have seen them throwing out any of these picks, which are fairly mainstream in this version of the House Republican Party.
And Garrett, really fascinating stuff today, too, because Dr. Fauci testified before the Senate today, and he got into some really heated exchanges with Republican Senator Rand Paul. I mean, it feels like each one has been building and building, and today it just came to a head. But, Rand Paul accused Dr. Fauci of lying to Congress about NIH funding research in Wuhan. How did Dr. Fauci respond?
Yeah, this has been an ongoing theme in these Health and Education, Labor, Pensions Committee hearings with Dr. Fauci and Rand Paul, who Paul has been someone who's really tried to challenge the orthodoxy on where the coronavirus originally came from. They got into this back and forth today about whether or not the NIH had funded research at that lab in Wuhan, China, and Fauci had finally had enough. He fired back at Rand Paul like this.
I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you were referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function. Let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its spreadability to humans. Right. You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about.
Some good fireworks there, Lindsay, but not the most important part of the hearing. I think that's probably from the opening remarks that all of the public health officials present gave. They said the most important thing that can be done to end the pandemic now and save lives are for people who can go get vaccinated, don't have any health reasons not to, go get the vaccine now.
Garrett, legislation to move military sexual assault prosecution out of the chain of command moved one step closer today. Tell us about that and also what challenges lie ahead.
There's bipartisan support in the Senate for this legislation, which would essentially pull sexual assault and some other serious crimes within the military out of being investigated by the chain of command, which means this next officer up the chain essentially isn't responsible for overseeing that investigation and would be given to outside groups. But this is opposed. So what happened today was a subcommittee vote to include language that would do this in the big funding bill that pays for all of the Pentagon's operations for the next year. So one small step there, but the leadership of this committee, namely Jack Reed, Democrat from Rhode Island, is still opposed to this measure and may try to strip it out. Every time this comes up, the measure gets a little bit more support in the Senate. There's probably more than 60 votes to get it across the threshold now, but there's never been a standalone vote on it. So you've got lawmakers trying to insert it into other provisions that must pass. Still a fight ahead on this issue, but Kirsten Gillibrand and Joni Ernst, who've been really pushing on this, continuing to make some progress.
A lot going on in your world today, Garrett Haake. Thanks so much.
You bet.
A breakthrough case of COVID-19 at the White House. An unnamed, fully vaccinated official has tested positive. Let's bring in NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli. So, Mike, Press Secretary Jen Psaki getting questioned about this case during her briefing today. How is this person doing, and is the White House planning to change any protocols?
Well, what the White House is saying is that this individual did face an initial positive test. They remain off campus, as they say, and will be waiting for a confirmatory PCR test to ensure that they do, in fact, have COVID. They've also done some contact tracing and determined that this individual had not been in direct contact with the president or with other senior White House officials when they were positive. But I have to tell you, Lindsay, I was in that briefing today. I've been watching these briefings on a daily basis since the president took office. And it's been a while since I heard the press secretary face as many questions, not just about COVID generally with the surge in cases that we're seeing attributed to the Delta case, but about what the White House is doing here at the White House to make sure that the staff and the president himself remain safe. Take a listen to how Psaki dealt with those questions.
Our protocols are in alignment with the highest standards and the guidance of our public health experts. We have a robust infrastructure to ensure compliance with these protocols, and we're asking staff to also monitor themselves for symptoms and stay off campus if they develop symptoms. So the news today is that while breakthrough cases will happen, the vaccines are effective and prevent against serious illness and death. We've seen that statistically across the country, with 99.5% of cases in hospitals being for individuals who are not vaccinated. And we will continue to abide by CDC guidelines.
Now, you heard Psaki run through the protocols that are in place here at the White House and where the president spends most of his time. But I think one of the most interesting things to be monitoring in the next few days, weeks, and perhaps months is the degree to which I've noticed that the president has begun sort of immersing himself with voters, with the general public in a way he hadn't done in quite a while. Last week, for instance, when he gave that speech in Philadelphia, he spent almost an hour shaking hands, taking selfies with some of those who are in attendance tomorrow. He'll be traveling to Cincinnati, a little bit of a campaign-style trip to sell his infrastructure plans, and we've seen him stop for ice cream, things like that. And so the degree to which the White House is all of a sudden perhaps more concerned about the president's safety will be on display, something worth keeping an eye on.
And your colleague Shannon Pettypiece has a story about possible vaccine mandates. Former White House COVID response coordinator Andy Slavitt telling her, quote, "I think once the vaccines go through full FDA approval, everything should be on the table." I mean, Slavitt still stays in touch with the White House. What are officials saying about this possibility of a mandate?
So it's unlikely that you're going to see the administration impose any federal vaccination mandate on the general public. But what Slavitt may be tipping off here is the degree to which, once we see that this emergency use authorization for these 3 COVID vaccines becomes a permanent authorization once the full vetting process goes through, that what the White House can do, the federal government, is impose a vaccination mandate on federal employees. And there are a lot of them doing things like being screeners at airports, the TSA workers. The federal workforce is significant and all across the country. But otherwise, I think it's more likely that you'll see state and local officials set up vaccination mandates, not for the general public, not the federal government.
Gotcha. And Mike, on the lighter note, President Biden hosting the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the White House today. Tom Brady brought the Lombardi Trophy and some jokes. What did he say to POTUS?
An interesting moment, because we remember that Tom Brady had a close relationship with the former president, with Donald Trump. He was a supporter of his. But perhaps because Tom Brady has been to the White House so often as a member of several championship teams, he was less daunted by the moment and willing to crack a few jokes. Take a listen to this.
Not a lot of people, think that we could have won. And in fact, I think about 40% of the people.
The equation is exact. 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 The equation is exact.
I won down in 21 years of playing, and they started calling me Sleepy Tom. Why would they do that to me?
Well, the president seemed to take those
x
jokes
스퀘어
in
마이너스
stride, but I will
xy
put on his behalf
플러스
that the few times
hy
Tom Brady didn't win the Super Bowl, it was against a certain New York football team that beat him twice in the Super Bowl.
아,
All right, Mike Beverly also bringing some football trivia. Thanks so much, Mike.
Thank you.
Make the most of your day with
Today in 30. We give you a mix of everything you love about our show in a mere 30 minutes.
Watch Today in 30 on your schedule. Streaming every day on Today All Day. Our world is facing some big challenges. Chuck Todd breaks them down. A deep dive into a new topic.
Instead of covering all the big stories,
따라서 x 스퀘어 마이너스 xy 플러스 y 스퀘어는 c
Exploring and explaining the critical issues that affect our future. Meet the press reports. All episodes of season 2 are now
빼기
available
3 더하기 9
on demand
마이너스
on Peacock. For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
Good evening tonight from Geneva, just hours away from his historic summit. President Biden wants to find common ground. Does Putin need common ground? Over 16,000 unaccompanied children tonight. What's victory look like?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Bolt.
the Meet the Press Chuck Toddcast, free wherever you get your podcasts.
Sometimes the news can be difficult and overwhelming for kids to understand.
Will coronavirus come back next year?
So to help make sense of it all, we've created a newscast just for them. Man, you know a lot. We hope your family will watch Nightly News Kids Edition. Our week-long journey begins here in Orlando, Laville, Kentucky. Our Cross America journey, reporting on an America rebuilding and reimagining a future after the pandemic. Good evening tonight from Geneva, just hours away from his historic summit. Over 16,000 unaccompanied children tonight in custody. What's victory look like, Lester? What does improvement look like? It's going to be a challenge to meet that 70% goal. Why is it so challenging?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Bolt.
Right now on NBC News Now.
They are escaping a number of conditions there, violence and persecution in their home countries.
They are speaking out against laws that they feel would make it harder for Texas voters to cast their ballot.
There's excitement that we are now turning the corner. We heard the mask mandate and mask guidance coming from the CDC earlier today.
We have a team of correspondents covering this breaking story for us today.
Boss Baby is coming to theaters. Let's roll. And streaming on Peacock the same day.
Is this some kind of a ninja boy band?
The Boss Baby Family Business. Rated PG in theaters Friday and streaming the same day on Peacock. Go to bossbabymovie.com.
The richest man in the world adding another title to his resume. Astronaut. Jeff Bezos and crew soaring into space aboard the New Shepard rocket. NBC News senior business correspondent Stephanie Rule caught up with Jeff Bezos and his brother after their historic flight.
Hey there, Lindsay. It has been quite a day for American exceptionalism. For those who love space, for those who love science, for those who love the American dream. It was extraordinary to watch the maiden human voyage here for Blue Origin. That, of course, is Jeff Bezos' space exploration company. We watched that launch earlier today, and it was phenomenal. And while many people have said, what do I care? I'm not rich like that. This is for billionaires. Money should be spent elsewhere on other things. Jeff Bezos has said, now that he has looked at Earth in the rearview mirror, he wants to devote himself to protecting our planet and doing more. He also said, for all those people at home who think this doesn't affect them, here's what he thinks matters. Jeff Bezos, you are an astronaut now. How does it feel?
It's amazing. You know, there are no words. It was a perfect mission. I'm not talented enough to put this into words. The accelerating G-forces and how that felt your skin pulled back and pushed into the seat. And then zero G comes so suddenly, and then you're just floating. My brother pointed out in the car back that it kind of feels like we almost evolved. It's like surprisingly natural. It's like effortless in zero G. You feel comfortable. It's not weird at all. It's very nice.
You have spent your whole life with this man.
Yeah.
In West Texas, you spent time on your grandfather's farm playing space cowboys, but this is so much more than boys who wanted to be astronauts.
Yeah.
Your brother has been determined to advance space travel. I want to know, what did it feel like to be up there together when you locked eyes?
It was pretty special. First of all, it just meant a tremendous amount to me to be able to represent my mom and dad, our sister Christina, in being there to celebrate a lifelong dream come true. And I can tell you that we decided to hi wow. Well, yeah, a little.
Hi, Mom?
We did a little hi mom in zero G. One of us was upside down in zero G. The other side. Hopefully we got it right. We don't know if it came out. We'll have to go again. It could be hi wow if we got it wrong. Or wow hi. Yeah.
This was your dream, but for all those millions of Americans who are watching this, who are saying, this is a joyride, it has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
What did you experience that matters to all Americans?
Well, listen, we have to build a road to space so that our kids and their kids can build the future. We live on this beautiful planet. We saw this. I mean, you can't imagine how thin the atmosphere is when you see it from space. We live in it, and it looks so big. It feels like, this atmosphere is huge, and we can disregard it and treat it poorly. When you get up there and you see it, you see how tiny it is and how fragile it is. We need to take all heavy industry, all polluting industry, and move it into space and keep Earth as this beautiful gem of a planet that it is. Now, that's going to take decades and decades to achieve, but you have to start. And big things start with small steps. And we need reusable rocket vehicles, so we need to practice with them. And that's what this suborbital tourism mission allows us to do, is to practice over and over. So this is the very beginning of that, and it's exciting.
Is there anything now that you didn't think yesterday, but now you're saying, I'm going to do this. This is the change that's going to happen next?
So for me, it really is commitment to the
the
environment. I think if you look at it too, we have too much vilification in society today and not enough unity. So we need unifiers, not vilifiers. And when you look out at the planet, there are no borders. There's nothing. It's one planet, and we share it, and it's fragile.
Well, until now, space exploration has been a passion of yours.